Confusion.
So, since I've not been quiet about how I view Season 4 as Charmed at its absolute best, you can imagine I've had lots of requests to cover 2 specific episodes from towards the end of the season. We're off to see The Wizard, featuring a major turning point in the Cole becomes the Source storyline, and Long Live the Queen, which immediately follows it, and turns into one of the biggest wham episodes in the series. Since they are essentially a 2-part episode without the labelling, and it's hard to talk about one without covering the other, here's 2 for the price of 1.
One of us is alive and well.
Not for long.
We're off to see The Wizard starts our 2-parter off with the arrival of a wizard, naturally, played by Armin Shimmerman, who of course is best known as Principal Snyder on Buffy, making this one of the highest profile actor crossovers between the shows. And in one episode of this show, he gets to do far more than he ever did in 3 seasons of Buffy, playing a very fun and enjoyably irritating... well, I'm not sure what word to use without being censored. Too bad he really didn't enjoy his time on the show.
Of all the shows I've ever worked, that was by far the ugliest.
He's here because there is to be an official coronation for the new Source, who isn't operating at the same power level just yet, and will once it happens.
Our only chance to stop him will be tonight, before he receives his full powers at the coronation.
At this point, Paige has become too suspicious of Cole's strange behaviour to ignore it anymore, and has got Piper on board to try and approach Phoebe. The new Mrs. Turner may have settled in nicely as the new advice columnist at the Bay Mirror, but she's also discovered she's pregnant, and the audience knows it's the Source's heir. It's already manifesting as an abnormal pregnancy by giving her the power to throw fire and make mean-spirited quips after vanquishing the bad guys.
Homewrecker.
And while the Source had been doing a good job at suppressing Cole, the news that Phoebe is expecting reawakens his good side, and much wholesome excitement about becoming a father ensues.
I'm gonna be a daddy.
One person who isn't excited is the Seer, who sees a possibility for all her plans to be ruined, and therefore resorts to heavy-duty manipulation that has shocking results.
That was the Source. And his queen.
Like all good part 1s should do, we're off to see The Wizard is all about setup. It tends to be easier to build hype than to pay it off, which is why I prefer Buffy's Becoming Part 1 to the Part 2, and I like Avengers Infinity War more than Endgame. And this one is more exciting and action-packed than Long Live the Queen, which is more of an internal character study.
You're trying to destroy me.
I'm trying to help you.
There is character work going on here as well, of course, such as the notion that Cole's humanity once again comes close to overcoming the Source's influence, and Phoebe slipping back into evil again, but this is more about the setup, and putting the pieces in place so Long Live the Queen can pay them off. And the setup is as solid as Charmed ever got, although, as I said before, I do find Paige insufferable in this arc.
No, you don't need to do that. Besides, he's so busy being Mr. Hotshot lawyer guy and all.
Check out the Cole problem video so I don't have to repeat myself and make us all depressed.
Bitch!
On the superficial side, I just love the Season 4 sets. This was the first season to really show us the underworld in detail, and it would differ from how Seasons 5 and 6 would weirdly show things like a demonic strip club and reality TV, but I much prefer this interpretation, and I'm very glad they went back to it in Season 7. Yes, it is very traditional, black colouring equals evil, but you know what? I kind of like that. Black and white morality. Very rigid, and actually very appropriate for this 2-parter, where the theme is all about picking a side and how you can't have things both ways. So black and dark colouring overall standing in for the evil place works for the story.
Phoebe, you can't be the queen of the underworld and a charmed one. You can't have it both ways.
We also see a couple of callbacks to other episodes, reminding us that Charmed did have good continuity just as many times as not.
Well, you had firepower in your past life.
I was evil in my past life.
The baby gives Phoebe the power to throw fire, just like she had in her past life, again when she defected to evil for a man she loved. When confronting Cole's demonic secretary Julie, Phoebe stops Piper and Paige from helping, saying,
This is my fight.
which is something that Prue likewise did and said in Primrose Empath, another episode in which a Charmed one gets a new power that she isn't meant to have.
This is my fight.
In both this and Sleuthing with the Enemy, the 2 non-Phoebe sisters work with an evil being towards a common goal, and Cole turns out to be the demon they're looking for, and Phoebe finds out the secret he's been hiding from her. Both episodes feature Phoebe coming in late to the party and assuming a demon is attacking, and a scene like this.
Phoebe! No!
And stuff like this just makes me happy because I remember that Charmed did bring some symmetry and forward planning to its storytelling, and more of it than people remember.
I knew your sister.
I mentioned in the Charmed and Dangerous video that Phoebe and the Seer were the ones to join forces and banish the Hollow, in subtle foreshadowing of the role the Seer would later play in Phoebe's life. Here is where it pays off.
What I've done is not important. What you must do now, however, is...
Now we get to see Debbie Morgan really bring it. I'm not sure if it's just her performance doing the heavy lifting, but can we just say this is a fantastic character?
And despite my best efforts, he never stopped loving you.
She plays someone who spends most of her time being a duplicitous puppet master in the background, and yet she steals every scene.
If losing the witch has cost you your will, then I will get it back.
She plays this like she's Lady Macbeth to everyone, and sweet Jesus, it works.
It's time to embrace your new family, your new destiny.
A detail I also only recently noticed is how the Seer is immune to Phoebe's fire throwing. It's both an indicator that she's more powerful than she seems, and possibly a hint to her true motives.
Oh, I didn't do this for your future. I did it for mine.
This episode is the turning point for the Seer, who we see actively go against Cole's wishes for the first time, beyond simply encouraging the Source's possession, and Womb Raider will clarify that she wants that baby for herself so she can become the Source, or at least his mother. And once you know this, to see her manipulating Phoebe and Cole just becomes even more tragic on a rewatch.
Save him. For your son.
And tragic is just about the only way to describe Cole's arc in this episode.
He'll kill you. Take your throne.
He can have it.
Much like how it has callbacks to sleuthing with the enemy, the plot echoes that one by being about Cole getting swayed away from other people's plans for him by his love for Phoebe. I just find it very refreshing that a man's excitement about becoming a father is what briefly shakes him out of the literal source of all evil's possession.
I'm pregnant.
You're what?
He fights that possession in this episode harder than he ever had before, and comes so close to getting rid of it completely by transferring it to the wizard. And then Phoebe torpedoes it all thanks to the Seer's manipulation.
Oh, but he was the last chance.
No, it wasn't.
That's honestly one of the biggest gut punches that got me on my first watch, and I held out hope that it would be resolved.
Hope. Dashed.
But before we get into Long Live the Queen, a couple more fun facts.
We'll steal the grimoire.
Oh, what's that?
Evil Book of Shadows.
The underworld is shown to have an evil counterpart to the Book of Shadows that good beings can't touch, and they call it a grimoire. Historically, a grimoire was just a book of spells that had information on ritual preparation, how to make magical items, how to summon magic entities, etc. It was distinct from the Book of Shadows, which only came into being with the rise of Wicca and neo-paganism in the 20th century, as being a more general source of information rather than specific to each coven or practitioner. Grimoires got demonized by the Inquisition in the 1500s as fear of witchcraft spread, which is probably why in most fantasy settings they're presented as either a source of black magic or at least dangerous wisdom. Most famously the Necronomicon in the stories of H.P. Lovecraft. In Charmed, evil witches would be said to have a grimoire, such as Tuatha in That Old Black Magic, and the Phoenix Witches from Crisscrossed. You can't see the designs too far up close, but they're pretty cool. Oh, and this scene of Piper attempting to destroy it with potions looks quite like this movie-exclusive scene in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows of the trio trying to destroy the Horcrux. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. But anyway, we're off to see the wizard ends with Phoebe killing the wizard before he can accept the Source's powers, then joining with Cole to become Queen of the Underworld.
My life is with you and our baby.
Long Live the Queen shows her struggling to adjust to this, with all of Cole's obligations as the Source leaving him with no time for her, and their apartment full of non-stop demonic chanting.
And I can't concentrate!
She also misses her sisters, whose priorities have now shifted. Paige wants to convince Phoebe to turn back good, while Piper is convinced she's an enemy they'll have to fight very soon.
I will not scald Phoebe's flesh. She's still our sister.
Phoebe is drawn back into the charmed circle when she gets a premonition of a demon she knows personally killing an innocent, and actually, both sides make it clear that she'll have to choose between her husband and her sisters sooner or later.
It's not fair!
It's not fair, Phoebe, but you have to pick a side. Good or evil.
Long Live the Queen is of course the slower burn, and more character-focused episode examining the fallout of Phoebe's sort of heel turn.
For instance, we could talk about how rigid you are, it's really not a very attractive quality.
Wait.
Piper completely goes to pieces, considering this is as good as losing another sister in less than a year. And once again, we see that manifest in the form of tranquil anger and a focus on demon hunting.
If she shows up here, we'll do what we have to do to protect ourselves.
She also gets blackout drunk, which is quite a sight.
Ah!
Paige is the optimist and mediator, trying to sway Phoebe back to their side and keep the family together, which is a welcome change from the passive aggressiveness that made up her last few episodes. And this isn't the first time we see Paige take up this mantle, since in Saving Private Leo, she was again acting as that moral support when Leo wasn't able to.
You are not responsible for their actions.
At this point in the season, she's mastered orbing and gotten a confidence boost from vanquishing the Source, so this is where we see Paige stop being the complete rookie and stand on her own 2 feet.
Then what?
Then I'm gonna put this family back together.
Although Phoebe was previously the glue that held the sisters together, we see that it is Paige who can be counted on to pick up the slack when times get tough, and this is definitely more from her social worker background than her magical one. And it comes out more and more as she embraces her white lighter side.
Ding ding. Back to your corners.
I'm going to be charitable to her here, and suggest that maybe she now regrets the route she took in trying to prove her point with Cole, since she even admits.
Oh, honey, I didn't want to be right.
And possibly she realizes that she turned a very personal issue into a bit of a petty clout game for her to win, which in effect drove Phoebe into the Seer's clutches. In short, she realizes she messed up as a sister and is trying to make up for it.
A year ago, you were an only child.
And I don't want to be again.
Before we get to Phoebe, we'll touch on the Seer again, and just how fiendishly brilliant she is as a manipulator.
Because it's not in the nature of good to compromise. They'll never understand. They'll only want to change you back.
She's now getting Phoebe to drink a special tonic that soothes Rosemary's baby and nourishes the evil inside her, but it also has another effect.
What's in it?
Pure evil. The baby feeds on it.
The tonic influences Phoebe to be more predisposed to evil, with how she happily kills demons who annoy her, and encourages one of her readers to be violent towards an unfaithful husband.
I suggest you beat your cheating husband with his secretary's stapler. Then he'll think twice before bending her over her desk again.
And notice that Cole is now less conflicted than he was in the previous episode.
You took my hand and walked me through that coronation long before anybody gave you anything to drink.
Cole was never in love with evil Phoebe. He fell in love with good Phoebe, and it was her goodness that proved a positive influence on him. So the Seer is likely thinking of that, and so the tonic's other purpose is to suppress the parts of Phoebe that could potentially convince Cole to fight off the Source's possession again. Since her previous plan to try and split them up failed miserably, she's obviously learned from her mistakes.
Did you know about the tonic?
Yes.
I swear, the Seer is probably low-key the best villain on the show.
You took away my will.
No. You made the choice to stand by your husband all on your own.
But of course, this episode and the two-parter overall is all about Phoebe. And you could argue that this is a conclusion to a character arc that started in Season 3 with the introduction of Cole, wherein she finally has to learn that she can't have things both ways. One of the reasons I gave up on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is because of how insufferable our lead heroine was, in that anytime some conflict came up, she always tried to have things both ways. And the show relished in presenting this as the correct course of action. There's taking a third option and finding a miracle solution to a seeming impossibility, and then there's just trying to have the cake and eat it too. She first tried to have it all by pretending she vanquished him, in effect choosing not to choose between him and her sisters, but it ended up working out when Cole was persuaded to become good completely. Her next step in trying to have it all was not accepting his proposal, and yet still expecting him to carry on as they were, which she eventually got over by accepting it in the end. So once again, Phoebe finds herself in a situation that she can't take a third option on.
You just have to be willing to meet me halfway.
Phoebe, you can't protect the innocent and save demons. It just doesn't work that way.
It's either give up her husband or give up being a charmed one. And the thing that first sways Phoebe back to good isn't her sisters, but an innocent in need of help, which is something of a nice callback to her very first premonition, and how she became the first charmed one to use her powers to help someone else. And it's finding out that Cole killed their innocent that makes her choose good.
You killed him?
I personally like that the Vanquish scene isn't a big action-packed battle like Charmed and Dangerous, but a smaller and more intimate character moment. This isn't triumph, it's tragedy. There's no celebration for beating their arch-enemy, because this isn't something anyone wanted. Like the vanquish of Shax at the beginning of the season, it's a reminder of what evil has taken from them. Or, as the ghost in Pre-Witched says,
evil exists for one reason: to spread loss.
And it's a nice touch that once it's obvious the vanquish is going to happen, the Source seems to just give up. And it's definitely Cole at the forefront, making sure his potential last words to Phoebe count.
I'll always love you.
Paige likewise has the decency to be sad about this, following on from her character development, allowing me to at least headcanon that she feels bad for Cole as well as Phoebe.
Vanquish this evil from time and space.
The final scene of the episode is one everyone remembers, and it's endured as one of the most emotional moments across the whole series. The setup is just brilliant.
If it had been you...
And Paige is utilised just as well as she was in Hell Hath No Fury, as someone who's experienced loss and knows how to help someone deal with it. She helped Piper, and now she helps Phoebe with it too.
She's gonna be alone a lot. Maybe right now she needs us.
And kudos to Alyssa Milano. When covering Season 2's Morality Bites for the House of Halliwell podcast, Holly Marie Combs said Alyssa always defaulted to comedy in making things light-hearted, because acting out emotional scenes could often be very painful for her, and this has the added effect of enhancing the sadness of these moments. The fact that this is painful for the actress comes across on screen as painful for the character, who overall is a very positive person, and therefore doesn't know how to deal with said pain. And there's no glamour whatsoever. Baggy clothes, messy hair, what appears to be yesterday's makeup, and a lot of ugly crying. It often wasn't easy for actresses to forego glamour and prettiness for the sake of these scenes. See Jessica Alba being told to cry prettier in Rise of the Silver Surfer, and the Charmed girls always looked more glamorous than usual, so it's something that adds to the effectiveness. And supposedly this scene was originally much different, involving lots of dialogue, but...
And I remember saying, I just don't think she would really want to talk about it.
I don't really have a lengthy conclusion for you on this one, because this scene and these two episodes, and of course their merits, more than speak for themselves.